Yo, what's going on, guys? Today we have 6 American things that are actually British. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what this video is gonna be about, but I would love to see the things that we use on a daily that are actually you guys' things. Without further ado, man, we're gonna get straight to the video. Let's do it.
Lawrence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to things and stuff. Specifically, things and stuff you always thought were American, but were in fact conceived in Britain.
Let's
To all
do
of
it.
the good people out there, plus my wife's cousin Chad, who think I suddenly have an agenda against America, that is nonsense. Because in my next YouTube long, I'll be shocking the world again with 6 British things that are actually American. See? I don't like any of you. That's not true. Please don't unsubscribe. So often in life we encounter things and stuff without ever contemplating what their origin story is.
True.
But because I didn't grow up in the United States, I've developed a certain curiosity for American things and stuff since moving here 15 years ago. To the extent that since I started this channel, I've probably learned more facts about America than I have Britain. But also that those American facts are sometimes British ones in disguise. And so, if you're intrigued by this and somehow haven't yet subscribed, do that now.
Subscribe.
Then, a quick word about today's sponsors. Babbel. On
I'm
this
sorry.
channel,
I
we
usually
talk
watch
about
these, but I don't have time today.
Spanish
So
word. Wow. Languages
Just
feel
gonna
like
skip
Apple
them.
even off the
Sorry.
lifetime count. Those I've always wanted. In the meantime, here are 6 American things that are actually British. Here in
steak
the Midwest,
sauce.
I quickly learned that the single most popular food after corn is meat and potatoes, which I've just realised is 2 separate things. But something else that's popular on this side of the pond is sauce to go with your meat. In addition to ketchup and barbecue, I often encounter one bottle that initially appeared the very definition of American patriotism. It was red, white and blue. The letter A obviously stood for America, and number 1 must have been shorthand for greatest country in the world. Quite honestly, few things more visibly screamed welcome to America than A1 steak sauce. I thought a bald eagle was going to burst out. But here's the thing, any bald eagle worth its salt would know that A1 steak sauce actually originated in England. But wait, Lawrence, did you just say that A1 originated in England? Yes, Lawrence, and that's very much in addition to the road of the same name. Its
That's interesting.
origins can be traced precisely to a small, modest home in London called Buckingham Palace. That's right, it was a building recognised the world over in which a chef by the name of Henderson William Brand unveiled the original sauce to none other than King George IV. Now, as an aside, in Ireland last year I personally bore witness to that monarch's footprints. They were quite small. The sauce went on commercial sale in 1831 under the ownership of Brand's company, Brand & Co. However, by 1871 the brand was under different ownership, and at this time it acquired the name A1. Contrary to popular belief, the name has nothing to do with the king exclaiming A1 as in magnificent. Instead, it was inspired by an insurance standard at Lloyd's of London that denoted a good ship. As its popularity grew, so did its distribution. By 1906, it was sold in the United States, where it would later acquire the name A1 steak sauce and become
Okay.
a mainstay of the nation's condiments. By the
That's
late
interesting.
1970s, amid overwhelming competition from HP sauce and Daddy's brown sauce, A1 all but disappeared from UK shelves. When I first moved to the United States, it just happened to be at a time when my wife's sister was graduating from what Americans referred to as college. As a new immigrant, I had way less agency back then, and I was forced to attend her graduation. I was happy to be there. In addition to chucking their graduate caps in the air and seemingly having no limitation on the number of family they could invite, American students would form a procession to a very familiar piece of music. Often known here as either Pomp and Circumstance or the Graduation March, its melody was identical to what we in Britain know as Land of Hope and Glory. On a side note, I was personally gutted that the music did not herald the arrival of Randy Macho Man Savage, himself synonymous with the tune. But even the greatest of American wrestlers couldn't change the fact that this music is very, 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 very English. It was
I
composed
didn't know
by
that.
Sir Edward Elgar as part of his Pomp and Circumstance marches, hence why Americans call it Pomp and Circumstance. But it wasn't written with graduations in mind, or WrestleMania 7. In fact, it wasn't written with much in mind at all until Edward VII, who had medium-sized feet, suggested it be part of his coronation ode with words and everything. After that,
Okay.
it generally became a patriotic English tune, to the extent that people often consider it a stronger candidate for our national anthem than God Save the King, itself repackaged in America as My Country 'Tis of Thee. So how did a perceived symbol of English exceptionalism become America's de facto graduation march? Well, that too was the work of Mr. Mustache himself, Edward Elgar. In 1905, after receiving an honorary doctorate from University, Elgar performed a selection of his own works at the ceremony, including Pomp and Circumstance March No. 1. It was so well received that the music reached other universities and a tradition was born.
Halloween.
Well, it's almost that time of year again. In fact, on nearby porches, I've been seeing plastic dead people for the better part of a month. So I figured I might as well get in on the act. You see, in the United States, Halloween has long felt like a much larger deal than it did in Britain. It is America's enthusiasm for the occasion, in fact, that leads many of us to think of it as American. This feeling is strengthened further by the fact that many modern US Halloween traditions have spread to other countries. But it was two of those other countries that brought Halloween to the United States in the first place: Ireland and Scotland. You see, the origins of Halloween are very often linked to the Gaelic festival Samhain, which is not pronounced Samhain, but knowing my luck probably isn't pronounced Samhain either. Starting in the 9th century, it would be observed in Ireland, Scotland and the Isle of Man from October 31st to November 1st, with Samhain also the Irish language name for November. The holiday has seen all sorts of twists and turns since then, but in the interest of time, let's skip forward by 1,000 years. For it was during the 18th and 19th centuries that something happened to bring Halloween to a young United States: mass Irish and Scottish immigration. And before Uncle Toby chimes in with, didn't English colonists recognise All Hallows Eve before then? Yes, to some degree, but any such celebrations were likely muted owing to puritanical opposition. The Scots and the Irish brought with them several traditions that would eventually catch on in the United States, including jack-o'-lanterns. Historically, these would have been made with turnips. However, immigrants to America soon realised that native pumpkin presented a softer and larger surface on which to carve a face. And speaking of large things with cracks in them, that brings us on to this. When you think of the United States, you think of three words: freedom, freedom, and freedom, and often in that exact order. And you don't have to live here to realise the extent to which freedom is precisely the rallying cry of so many of its symbols. You've got the Statue of Liberty, the Freedom Tower, Independence Hall. A short walk from that last one, you'll find the Liberty Bell. And just as Lady Liberty was constructed across the pond, the same is true of this £2,000 instrument, something I discovered before visiting it. Now granted, the idea of navigating tight security just to see a slightly damaged symbol of America's independence from the British might not sound like every Brit's cup of tea, but I had an obscurely sentimental reason for doing so. You see, in the irony to end all ironies, the Liberty Bell was cast not in Philadelphia, but London, specifically at the Whitechapel Bell Foundry. Now, in case you didn't know, Whitechapel was also the setting of my last English address before moving to America. In fact, I lived half a mile from where both Big Ben and the Liberty Bell were made. So that just leaves one question. Why wasn't it cast in the United States? Surely having it commissioned to the country from which you've just gained your independence is completely and utterly a little bit weird. And that would be true were it not for one thing. The Liberty Bell was delivered a good 24 years before the Revolutionary War. In fact, it was ordered by the city to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Charter of Privileges, a constitution that granted powers to the British colonists in Pennsylvania. The charter's chief architect was William Penn, himself an Englishman who founded the province of Pennsylvania. But not all would go smoothly. Famously, of course, the bell cracked during its first test in Philadelphia, making us, the British, look like idiots. And after the Revolution, it completed its heel turn by ringing during the reading of the Declaration of Independence, allegedly. Which makes you wonder, is that when somebody first uttered the phrase, "Let freedom ring"? No, that phrase is first attributed to the song, "My Country 'Tis of Thee."
Apple pie.
In the US, when something is considered uniquely American, you might hear the phrase, "It's as American as apple pie." But having looked deeper into this, I can't help but feel that such a proclamation might come as a shock to apple pies. And that's because for centuries they graced several European countries before arriving in the New World. Chief among these was the place of their origin, England. In fact, a recipe for apple pies can be found in an English cookbook all the way back in the 1300s when our language was still complete gibberish. As you've probably guessed, they were brought to North America by colonists in the 17th century.
Not gonna lie,
What you might
I love me some apple pies, man. You ever been to McDonald's? Yes, get that apple pie from McDonald's. Amazing.
not know is that that same sentence can also be applied to apple trees, which did not exist in America before that time. But it wouldn't be till the 18th century that apple pie's popularity began to surge in a newly independent United States. In 1796, a recipe for apple pie was featured in America's first cookbook, American Cookery by Amelia Simmons. Thereafter, it would become a symbol of American prosperity. In fact, to this day, it is famously eaten on the 4th of July when Americans come together to celebrate their independence from the very country that gave them apple pie in the first place. And you begin to wonder whether this might have been by design, especially since they repeated the trick with another pie on another holiday.
Pumpkin pie.
That's right, pumpkin pie, a dessert widely associated with America's Thanksgiving, was first
I don't like pumpkin pie though. Like, I don't like it.
conceived in England. And I know what you're thinking. Ooh, Lawrence, you told us that Britain didn't even have pumpkins until receiving them from North America. Yes, I did. But just as America sent a jazzed up version of Halloween back to Europe, we did the same to you with pumpkins. Sort of. You see, if you give my homeland anything that might conceivably fit inside a pie, we will find a way to make that happen. And so it was with pumpkin, or as it was known in 17th century England, Pompion, as recorded in Shakespeare's Merry Wives of Windsor. And yes, I did just mentally rename the graduation march Pompion Circumstance. Leave me alone. One of the earliest known recipes for Pompion pie can be found in the English cookbook The Gentlewoman's Companion by Hannah Woolley. Published in 1675, it called for alternating layers of pumpkin and apple, spiced rosemary, sweet marjoram, and a handful of thyme. So a bit different from the custard-based pumpkin filling of today. Nonetheless, variations on this pie were enjoyed by English colonists after arriving in North America in the 50 years prior. According to historical record, it would evolve into what we know today during the 18th century, when it too was featured in Amelia Simmons' American Cookery. Of course, even though each entry on this list had its origins in Britain and Ireland, it doesn't mean they're not a valued part of my American experience. That spot is reserved for peeps. Next week, I'll be enriching your lives even more with 6 British things that are actually American, so stay tuned. Thank you to my ponderers with whom I often discuss these sorts of things on my secret live streams. If you would like to become a ponderer and support the work I do, join me at patreon.com/lostinthepond or by clicking the join button below. Until the next video, goodbye.
This was a good video. This was a very good video. I didn't know about the Halloween. Most of these things I didn't know about. The pumpkin pie, the apple pies, and stuff like that. I didn't know about most of these stuff. That's why you watch stuff like this, man. You watch stuff like this so you can learn more about different cultures. And while you learn more about different cultures, you learn more about your culture also and stuff like that. So this was a very good video. If this was your first time here on this channel, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.